Hello, good morning to everyone. So, as Chef said, my name is Andreas Pfeifer. I'm acting as a Global Fleet Safety Officer at VistaJet and also flying the Global. I hope you had a good conference so far. For me, it's 5:30 here. I'm actually not in Malta, I'm in Munich, and both kids are asleep. So we'll jump right to it before it gets to one of those funny Zoom moments. So, who is VistaJet and what do we do? VistaJet was founded by Thomas Flohr 2004 with the vision of making flying private simple and transparent. We are a business jet operator with an ASBAA AOC and certified with Argus, WIFAN, and AsBAA. The headquarters is in Malta, but in the meantime, it established a truly global footprint. So, currently, there are 74 silver and red planes, as you can see. The main fleet is composed of Bombardier, Challenger, and Global business jets, and they all have the same characteristic silver with a red stripe livery and a consistent interior color scheme and cabin layout. What has VistaJet done so far? This is quite impressive. Flown over 440,000 passengers on over 177,000 flights to over 1,900 airports in 187 countries. This equals to 96% of the world, which I find is quite impressive. And as you can imagine, with such a variety of operations, especially having aircraft capable of flying up to 16 hours connecting the most exotic places, it's not an exception that you fly from one place with a departure aerodrome weather significantly different to your arrival aerodrome weather, and even on the same day, of course. So I want to take you on this little mind journey here. So imagine you're a crew sitting somewhere and you get a flight briefing to a beautiful summer beach holiday destination, which makes you really happy already inside. But before you get there, you have to deal with this first. Expect the unexpected. What was that? That was a not forecasted freezing rain encounter overnight in Russia, which, as you can see, completely froze up the aircraft. This was very challenging to the crew. It required hot air unit on several occasions, including, of course, the engine preheating. As you can see, our handling, one of the local staff there, who had to climb into the engine and to do a preheating of both engines for 5 to 10 minutes. This was very well done by our team, and even better, it was nicely shared within the company internally to all colleagues so we can learn from it. And these pictures are just the spice to begin with, but now let's see what else is out there. So I called this from Kuwait to Yakutsk. To begin with, my background has nothing to do with meteorology. I'm just a pilot and have a safety and regulatory background. And I decided, instead of going through everything possible, I want to focus on some extremes and share some key points with you on how we believe an organization can deal with those challenges. In the bottom left, you can see ash cloud. This is observed in a lot of places, but examples are to be found, for example, in Iceland, Indonesia, and Italy. Even though this is not directly related to extreme weather, however, a cloud is a cloud, no matter if it's water or ash content. I'm not going to go into details about that, apart from sharing there's nothing to do apart from planning ahead, monitoring for avoidance, and if it ever encounters, you have to perform your manufacturer emergency procedures. The same goes for static weather. I know weather can never be static, but I just called it that for illustration. What I mean with this is the famous fog season, for example, in London, or a continuous nimbus stratus rain, which seems to be pretty normal weather stuff for every aviator. So I'm not spending time here either. What I will talk about is dynamic weather, which I mean is strong convector for even cyclone related, something like typhoons, hurricanes, flooding. I will share some stories here, as well as hot weather, even though this is rare because it only becomes mostly an issue with 45 degrees Celsius, 130 degrees Fahrenheit, but it can be very challenging indeed. And of course, the famous cold weather operation, which definitely is the most influencing factor for a business jet. So let's have a look here. guess you're getting cold already just by the looks of it. And suddenly something like a uniform winter gear is very, very important. You remember the pictures at the beginning? So it can be incredibly challenging what's been thrown as a business jet crew during extreme winter operations. There are endless stories to share, and winter operations is not necessarily isolated to one area in the world, but some most challenging places are definitely in mainland Russia, and one of it is Yakutsk, which for a long time was known to be the coldest place on Earth, with a normal temperature range of 30 to 25 degrees in summer. In the top left corner, you see a video taken by one of our crew during a Boston blizzard, which went through when they started up the aircraft. And in the bottom right, an interesting picture, you can see a fully iced up engine spinner. What it was a crew was planned for a short turnaround just for picking up passengers. And during the descent, they encountered a heavy icing layer just 2,000 feet deep, even with full anti-ice on. But after landing, the aircraft looked like that, and all the non-heated surfaces had built up significant amount of ice. And as you can imagine, out of a short turnaround, it turned into something significantly longer, as they needed hot air to do ice removal of the spinner, as well, of course, a full de-ice cycle later. One of the fascinating reports we received about cold weather was a de-icing requirement at plus 15 degrees Celsius due to fuel chancering and consequently the cold salt fuel. And try this in Spain in October and watch out for the puzzled face of your handling agent when you ask him for de-icing there. That was interesting. A really remarkable story we have to share was when a CH noticed during taxi out, actually in Moscow, that the de-icing fluid on the wing seemed for her look different. So the crew went out, did a tactile check, and actually found out, hey, it was refreezing. So they returned to ramp, did a second de-icing with a different concentration. And this, of course, was an amazing report for us at safety. And we greatly shared that internally for motivation that everyone can speak up. So cold weather operation, really, we could spend hours about this topic. And but we should also have a look at the other extremes, which are as challenging. Hot weather. In hot weather, there are two factors to it. It's humidity versus temperature. Both can be very tough for crew and, of course, the aircraft on ground. I don't know if some of you had the pleasure of getting out the tow bar of a Global or a Gulfstream in the Seychelles out of the aft equipment bay during rain season. For all not familiar, probably there are 50 degrees Celsius in there in the back, and the humidity is simply killing you and making you really sweat in there. It's a nice thing to do, but the gym is done for the day, definitely. Temperature issues, we mainly see them in the Middle East, UAE, Kuwait, Riyadh, and they really start with 45 to 50 degrees Celsius, but it all depends on AFM limitations. Every aircraft is different. We see mostly air conditioning and avionics issue. And of course, what's very challenging is the logistic of maintaining food hygiene. So what can we say about hot weather? You've got to be prepared. You've got to do the needful. You have to be very creative. What I mean with this is that maybe even pulling the aircraft in a hangar for 2 hours will save the day, or even better, maybe switching off the aircraft, reducing the exposure of energized equipment to the heat is better than risking an AOG. So the last phenomena I want to talk about is dynamic weather, which often causes the most violent and extreme situations. On the top left corner, you see a picture of an aircraft on the runway 03 in Singapore Seletar. So they switched on the weather radar. It was actually during night. So they switched on the weather radar to look ahead, and they saw this wonderful cloud passing by. So of course they delayed the departure and waited for the storm to pass, but you can see the magnitude of what's available there. Towering clouds can be up to as flight level 500 in the ITC set zone. especially in Vietnam or Indonesia. I mean, we've all seen tropical storms, typhoons with airport floodings or super heavy rain, often actually seen in Singapore, stormy winds which throw planes around like paper kites. And I don't know if you remember, probably about 3 years ago, there was a heavy storm going through Hong Kong, and there was some footage available from the Hong Kong BAC where the wind just threw around the planes. This was really incredible. For dynamic weather, the real advice is you have to monitor it and you have to avoid it. Consider all options. One of it is ferry out, perform a tie-down procedure, pull the aircraft in a hangar, or simply delay. So what I'm going to do now is I want to share with you how an organization can be prepared for such a variety of extremes. Well, but can it really? Well, initially probably not. However, a system needs to be strong enough to cope with it once it happens for the first time. And what can be done? A solid training needs to be done there, and maybe even implement already in the initial training the extreme weather topic during line training. However, one has to be said that training will never replace the experience on that subject. So I'm going to share some thoughts with you how a flight ops department, how an operation control center, how an organization as a whole can build the necessary resilience for such situations. The first point is know your aircraft limitations. Follow AFM supplements, engrave special procedures as standard SOP, for example, modify normal checklists. What do I mean with this? I mean that a lot of manufacturers, AFMs or also the ground handling service manuals or something, they have hot or cold, or they have something like storm tie-down procedures in their manuals. And together with the second point, with the first point, no aircraft limitations, you've got to make them easily available to the crew. For example, something like cockpit reference pages or writing a limitation on a normal checklist helps tremendously. And of course, if you have a limitation like 45 degrees for bleed extractions, it is 45 degrees. It is not 46, because bending this limitation is just asking for trouble. Even though maybe a lot of us here have seen it working, but for a continuous operation, it just asks for trouble. The second point is protect your equipment. What do I mean with this? Well, we should make crew part of the game rather than seeing them as robots flying from A to B. Once they feel involved, the crew take care of the equipment as it's their own. So, but you as a flight ops department need to prepare the necessary guidance for hot and weather, especially cabin ops. This is most significant. Encourage everyone to speak up. What do I mean by everyone? From dispatchers to front desk staff, from pilots to cabin hostess, or even to outsourced service providers. Everyone. And how do we share? Openly share the lessons learned. Well, first of all, you have your reporting system for anything safety related. And what we at VistaJet have is a wonderful thing. We have an intranet powered by Workplace, Facebook at Work. And what we have there is we have a group, and we nicely share things which are nice to know for the rest of the team. So crew is welcome to upload their pictures and story as it's all company internal. And it gives some sort of a community feeling. What then the flight ops department or the safety department does is picking up of the very important bits, and of course uses it as for safety alerts, bulletins, or even memos. And the last point, always expect the unexpected. Bring time or additional crew. It's easier said than done, I understand, but maybe if you have a planned 12-hour duty on a winter ops day, it's already a good idea to anticipate the winter ops delay, plan with augmented crew, and by doing so, you withstand the unexpected by adapting your planning in advance. So what can the office do to help? I've summarized some recommendations here, which comes out of the Operations Control Center. The first point is monitor flights at least 24 hours ahead of departure. Create daily briefings. I think VistaJet, as well as other big organizations, have a weather briefing every 12 hours, which covers each planned flights, and it pre-informs all departments. So ops can act early to find the safest option. Second point, dedicated team focused on the mission. Well, this cannot be done while being involved in normal flight planning duty, dealing with permits, slot, flight plan routes, etc. A trouble flight should be on the radar already well in advance. Third point, work with frontline to each situation is different, consider all options. Working with on-field suggestions from crew and handling is vital. For example, hangar versus de-icing, or ferry out versus mooring down and maybe risking a storm damage. Each situation is different, and a good team will find the best option here. Build airport database over time, build a strong flight approval process. This helps tremendously, not to fall in the same trap twice. For example, missing a performance issue during hot weather can be an embarrassing showstopper, and you have to explain that to your customer. The last point is experience is vital. What do I mean with this? I mean OCC staff members. Some of our people in VistaJet are with us for 8 or more years. And the most modern flight planning system is not enough dealing with the worldwide operations. It requires knowledge and experience. For example, if you plan a flight in European summer to Ushuaia, Argentina, who would think that actually pre-ordering de-icing fluid becomes the bottleneck of such a flight? So coming to an end, let's zoom out and see it really from an organizational point of view. The first point, learn from what went well. Don't just look for the mistakes, even though, of course, every mistake is a chance. More important, also identify and learn from what went well. This is really much the safety 2 approach we are currently trying to achieve in aviation. Open reporting culture in a just environment, just culture. This is very common to all of us. However, it's often easier said than done. What I find is a good culpability tree helps counteract anger and frustration of the management level from a frontline mistake. Don't believe that purely flight hours build crew resilience to extreme weather ops. Look for worldwide exposure, recruitment, and upgrade policy. What does it mean, don't trust in flight hours? So what do you think if a pilot has flown, let's say, 5,000 hours on a 737 with a European low-cost operator? Will it prepare for a worldwide ad hoc charter operations? I'll let you answer that. But maybe it's a good idea to keep that in mind during recruitment, and of course also building of the internal upgrade policy. And now we come to the real thing. Focus on adapting your system so it gets easy to do the right thing and hard to do the wrong thing. This is of essence to the resilience engineering approach. Making a system strong by designing it so it gets easy to do the right thing and hard to do the wrong thing. We have to understand how a system currently works to find a way how we can enforce it. I'll give you a random example. Remember when the first EFBs came on the market? They all made our lives easier because we just used Cheppers on it. But what about now? Sometimes multiple applications, the pressure of keeping them updated all the time while only using weak hotel Wi-Fi's, or even trying to send out the weight and balance before departure when there is no data connection. So maybe a unified EFB system with a single combined application on top of a single update click, now maybe even only you have the possibility for a worldwide data hotspot, so crew can do it while waiting for the passengers in the plane. That could make the life of the crew easier. So understanding how the job is done leads to a way more efficient mitigation than over and over reminding the same thing to crew. Crew and pilots are the eyes and ears at the front line. Listen to them about suggestions and solutions. This is in line with Professor Professor Sidney Decker's approach to doing safety differently. But why differently? Well, centuries blind compliance was thought to be the goal to safety. More and more rules were built. In fact, statistics show, however, that this is not the solution. How many times do you come across a pilot who thinks his flight ops department has no idea what they're doing out here? Otherwise, they wouldn't have come up with such a nonsense procedure. Or how many times have you thought the same thing about regulators? It's exactly that. Sometimes the best procedure comes from the smallest frontline worker rather than from the managerial level. So now coming to an end. Currently, resilience has become more and more important, a lot of levels. Who would have thought that there are 2-day virtual conferences held worldwide? Many companies adapting quickly, so has AsBAA, and here we are. So I'm going to share with you some high-level benefits of believing the RE approach. First, reducing operational costs by reducing AOGs and consequent subcharters, reducing disruptions to ongoing schedule, building a reliable market reputation, and reducing the overall company risk. To finalize the presentation, I would state that I personally believe that a complex system can only be safe and efficient in the long run if it demonstrates resilience. Otherwise, all runs smoothly until something unexpected occurs and all goes terribly wrong. So imagine your people and consequently your system will build the competencies of adopting, avoiding, withstanding, recovering. In other words, show resilience in every unexpected situation which gets thrown at them. What would happen? Definitely one thing, a very low chance of accidents. It almost sounds too good to be true. Well, I do agree, but at least we need to aim for it by designing a system where it becomes easy to do the right thing. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Andreas. Let's take a minute here to get ready for the next presenter, Carlos, and we will be showing their bios on the next screen as well. We missed that previously, so give us a moment. Okay, Carlos, when you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Let me quickly share my screen.
No rush.
Okay, so thank you very much for inviting me to this panel today on the Virtual Safety Summit 2020. And thank you, Andreas, for the first part of the presentation. So basically, topic is the same as previously, but I want to give also some more inputs from a third-party provider, like we are UAS. So we are supporting companies like VistaJet and other operators, also private aircraft operators, and operating to all airports on this planet, typically to the challenging places. The challenges can vary from of course, permit issues, but also to the weather situations and what is needed on ground to cope with that. So what I want to explain today is, first of all, we in business aviation, we work with a wide range of jets, and our jets nowadays can connect almost all the city pairs on this planet. So flying 15 hours is happening, and this means in 15 hours you cross several weather zones, time zones, and then you face unique situations. So you depart in winter times, and then you arrive in summer, and then sometimes extreme summer situations. So so you have to de-ice upon departure, and then suddenly you arrive at a place where you need to worry about your aircraft limitations. And we see that on a daily basis. For example, I took an example from yesterday's weather situation, because if we think about winter, many of us think December, January, February, but yesterday, mid of November, departing in Fairbanks was already minus 23 degrees Celsius. So if you would have connected via Miami to Mozambique, you arrive at a situation with 36 degrees. This shows you within okay, this is 2 legs. This is close to, it's more than 24 hours, but on the next screen you see only 1 leg, Fairbanks to Darwin in Australia, which is certainly a city pair which we in Asia Pacific see happening. Well, before COVID, we saw that almost every day. It's you depart at minus 23 and you arrive at plus 34 degrees. So this means the extreme weather is part of our daily business, is part of the crew's daily business, and operators and then support companies like we are. Already starting in November in our region. Now, what Andreas also mentioned, there's limitations. There's limitations with the aircraft. It's outlined in the AFM, but in general, most aircraft, well, depending also on the engine, but in general, most aircraft have a limitation which is around minus 40 degrees. And at maximum, ISA plus 35. I mean, there might be some differences from type to type, but in general, this is where we can operate, where the aircraft can operate. Anything outside of that is, well, you face your limitations, and operation will not be possible anymore. Now, if we go back to what you've seen here, already mid of November, we are at minus 23 in Fairbanks, and then plus 34 in Darwin. So we are already very often operating on the edge, on the boundaries of those limitations. So of course, consulting with the crews. I mean, crews know the aircraft limitations best, but for us in the office and in the ops office, we need to have that in mind as well on the planning phase. Now, starting with the hot weather operations, I think Andreas already gave a introduction to that, so I will not duplicate that too much. But in general, we can see that our aircraft, the modern aircraft, are really well equipped to operate on hot weather. Now, the critical part starts when the aircraft is parked, engine shut down. Because as Andreas mentioned as well, we need to worry here on the passenger comfort, which includes the catering and the crew. In the situation, the crew sometimes sits on the ground and then waits for the passenger or the turnaround. And there's an outside temperature of 40 degrees. Avionics, batteries, all this technical equipment needs to be cooled, conditioned. If temperatures are rising too much here, you will face an AOG situation. So, for example, if displays and avionics without any cooling after 30 minutes, you need to switch them off. Also, the APU can only serve you up to a certain temperature. Exceeding this temperature, most of the aircraft will not, the AFM will not allow you to use the APU. So you would need to switch it off. And here comes again the preparation and the ground ops support, of the dispatch support, where we need to have an eye on pre-plan. I mean, to have the equipment on ground, like the cooling, conditioned ground air support, which would look like that. Now, problems we have in business aviation is we are not working with a fixed schedule. For example, the ground air, the conditioned ground air, you need to book it. It needs to be available for the entire time. Now, unlike a scheduled airline, we do have a schedule, yes, but we also offer the passengers flexibility, and they use the flexibility. So sometimes it's planned to stay 1 hour on ground, but the passengers are delayed. So your 1 hour extends to 2 or 3 hours, but you have high temperatures, and then you would need the entire period your ground air, the conditioned ground air. So this is something where the ops teams need to work ahead and then make sure this is available. Otherwise, you face situations where, again, your aircraft your aircraft cannot sustain this temperature because it's, or you need to run the APU, and then it's very complicated. So it's always nice to hear that what is needed on ground, but I just wanted to show you also a picture how it looks like, how an aircraft's provided with cool air on ground. So literally there's the unit coming by car, and there's a tube which in this picture it's a Global Express, so you connect it through the luggage door into the cabin, and here is the cool air coming to the cabin, and that's how the cruise waits for the passengers. Continuing hot weather operations in general, as I said, once your aircraft is running, once the engine is running, you are pretty much safe. The modern aircraft can cope with it, but there's some things which we have to have in mind, not only crew, but also the office support. I mean, taxiing, we all know, brake temperature is something that needs to be monitored. If the outside temperature is too hot and after landing, you have been braking, having too much braking action, it may happen you exceed the limits, and then certainly some plugs melt, and then you sit there with deflated tires. For takeoff, performance is something which pilots know, of course. I mean, the performance decreases with the heat, but most jets and in most airports nowadays have long runways. But again, this is also something that the ops team needs to look at in the very beginning to make sure that schedules are feasible from the beginning. For the landing, it's not as demanding as with cold weather, obviously, but we all know the rubber deposit on the runway. We all see that when we fly as a passenger. And now, what can happen if it's during high temperatures? This rubber deposit may melt and become very slick. So, just to give you an example, the aircraft is landing, as you see in the picture, all fine, they're rolling out, and when leaving the runway on the end of the landing runway, there's another rubber deposit, because a runway typically is used in both ways. So here there's a danger of skidding when turning off the runway. So all those things, of course, the pilots need to, I mean, the pilots are aware, but the more introduction, more support and explanation they get from the officers, the less they are exposed to stressy situations. For cold weather operations, we all know precipitation, snow, ice is the biggest enemy of the aircraft. De-icing is, as Andreas said, is a challenge, but I will not focus too much on that because the fluid selection is very important, and then the de-icing facilities need to be available, of course, but there's also a lot of things happening on the ground while the aircraft is not in motion, during the ground time. So, for example, a crew will always need to do a visual check of the aerodynamic of the wings and the fuselage. Now, sometimes they need ground equipment, like a simple equipment like a ladder, to climb up and to have a look. How does the fuselage look like? So for this, also we, as a ground support agent or back office, we need to prepare for that and make sure that everything is available at the station. Also for the cold weather operations. Sorry. Also the batteries, and they also have limitations, especially if you park your aircraft overnight. And a lot of manuals say that, for example, they need to be disconnected or even removed from the aircraft. Same as life rafts. Life rafts, we hardly think about life rafts, but they have also limits where they should not be exposed to temperatures. I've seen some of them at the maximum of 28 degrees. So if you're parking your aircraft in some environment exceeding this temperature, your equipment might get expired. So what we can do here on the ground or in preparation is search for options like heated hangar. Sometimes, as also mentioned previously, the cost for heated hangar parking can save a lot of, I mean, it's a good investment. It can save you a lot of hassle, AOG situations, delay, or anything like that. Just to give you a little bit more insight, I was speaking about the avionic batteries, which you might need to disconnect or even to remove. Now, again, this is a Global Express. This is the nose of the aircraft. Here you see the avionics batteries. Now, how to remove this thing? And once it's removed, where to bring it? I mean, consider your aircraft is a guest on this airport, so you cannot walk out with the battery, and you might even face customs issues on that in such a situation. So thinking ahead, planning ahead is essential. Sometimes little things like the hangar can save you the situation. And this is just to show you engine start of an Airbus A320 at -28 degrees. So it looks dangerous, but it's not. And the bottom line is the aircraft are equipped for that. They can operate at those temperatures if everything is well prepared from crew side and from ops side. So my point was, why is this all safety related? I mean, there's always a chain which leads to accidents, and then even the smallest thing can lead to more problems. As I said, the aircraft can operate with extreme weather. There is with a good preparation, but we're still in business aviation. The best preparation very often will just turn upside down by the passengers. And we promise the passengers to have this flexibility. We promise them if you decide to change your destination, you can do that. That's why they're using our jets. But of course, this has always a huge effect to the safety situation. And it suddenly can happen that your passenger decides to fly to another destination while you have prepared for extreme cold operations, and you suddenly fly to a very hot destination. So as Andreas mentioned, all the teams that they need to work together, they need to build up a safety culture and share experience, because our flight schedules are never the same as before, as the previous days. So experience sharing is basically the key, not only within one company, I mean, not only within the operator, also companies, third parties like our company. We give consulting services, we give support, and we help on different difficult missions. And sometimes we have seen situations which other operators have not seen before. So working together, sharing experience, and investing the time in preparation is, I think, the key for any safe operation. Auditing of the stations is something where companies like ours invest a lot of time, because basically one operator will, until, I mean, Andreas explained how many airports, how many countries VistaJet has visited last year, but I mean, there's still a lot more to see. And then until one operator has seen all the corners of this planet, it will take a while. So other providers like our provider, we combine experience from different operators. So we have a lot of experience to offer, and I think within our community, we need to share that to make our niche, which is the business aviation, safe. Now, communication with crews, dispatch, ops teams, I think this is something which is essential. We are very good nowadays on that. Even from a third-party perspective, I can see that it's working very, very well, and this is basically how we need to continue in business aviation. So yeah, that's basically my part on today's panel. So thank you very much.
Many thanks, Carlos and Andreas, for your expertise and for your time. We'll take a minute now to field any questions that you guys may have. We still have some time. I also noted that there are some questions that may have been unanswered or unaddressed earlier. There's one from Peter, and we'll make sure to reach out to that specific presenter, and we'll hope to get the responses back to you. We have another 5 minutes, so we'll take another probably 2-3 minutes for questions. Feel free to type your questions out. Okay, I think we're ready to move on here to our next session, which is actually our lunch. Thank you very much again to Carlos and to Andreas for your time, sir. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Have a
Thank
good
you very
day.
much.